Do you want to beat the Cinderace raid really easily and not have to worry about losing to a 7-star Cinderace that has a bunch of coverage moves? Well, in this video, I'm going to be covering everything that you need to know about the raid and how to beat it, and giving you guys the best tools to be able to beat it with either friends or on your own. If you guys enjoyed this kind of content, please be sure to let me know down below. Make sure to like and, comment down below if you guys, want to see anything else in the future from me. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so for the first Pokemon on this list that's going to be really helpful for Tera raids is actually going to be Pelipper. So Pelipper has a lot of different tools to make it super good into the Cinderace raid. And first off, its typing is incredibly strong. You resist the opposing fighting moves, you resist the opposing fire moves, right? You have a lot of different options that you can use to actually take these hits from Cinderace very comfortably. And as well too, Sucker Punch, which is another move that Cinderace will use, doesn't really hit it that hard because of how bulky it is. You have Hurricane to do as much damage as possible in Rain, along with the Damp Rock to let the Rain extend for 8 turns instead of 5 turns, which keeps it up for a longer duration in the raid, and it lets you just click Hurricane multiple times. You have Aqua Ring, which you can set up early on, so you can just get consistent healing while attacking at the end of every turn, which allows your Pelipper to kind of have more longevity. You won't have to waste turns healing as a team. You have Roost just in case you're in a pinch and Cinderace is doing enough damage to you. And Chilling Water is a supportive option you could use to just lower the Cinderace's attack stat over and over again with a move. So that way your other teammates can sit in front of Cinderace more comfortably as well. Pelipper is definitely a really good support option and also just does damage on its own. So it can really just do a lot into Cinderace anyways. And Hurricane in general is just a really high damage flying move. The Pelipper's bulk also allows it to sit in front of Cinderace. Now, some people might bring up, hey, doesn't Cinderace get Electro Ball? Because of Pelipper's speed tier and also Cinderace's weak special attack stat, even if it was to use Electro Ball, it wouldn't really be doing that much to Pelipper at all. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. And if it is, that's why there's alternative options, but it really shouldn't be too much of an issue for it. So for our second answer for the Cinderace raid that I think would be really solid as an option would actually be Slowbro. And the reason why Slowbro is so good is because of its typing. So it can essentially sit in front of the opposing Cinderace and take any hit. And you might be like, okay, Joe, but what about Sucker Punch? That's why you have Psychic Terrain with Terrain Extender on the Slowbro. If you set Psychic Terrain, they cannot use Sucker Punch because it is actually going to be blocked. Now you might be like, okay, what if the Cinderace uses Taunt? Because Cinderace also get access to Taunt. You're running Oblivious, so you can't get taunted by the Cinderace. And you could say, okay, what about Trailblaze? Well, my answer to that is just Slowbro's a tank, so it can just kind of sit in front of anything anyways. It should be able to absorb Trailblazes pretty easily. Electro Ball, even though Slowbro's slower, is only a 2 times super effective move. And Cinderace special attack stat's very weak, so we're not too worried about that. As well, too, it does also have Thunder Wave as well, which you could use to kind of prevent Cinderace from executing some of its turns if you need to. And then on top of that, you get Slack Off. And I think that the Terrain Extender Psychic Terrain combination, letting you extend your terrain for multiple turns, works really well, especially if you have both a Pelipper and a Slowbro on the same team. Because what you could do is you could have Pelipper Slowbro to weaken, first off, you weaken the moves with Rain, and then you also have Slowbro to set, the Terrain Extender Psychic Terrain, so your other Psychic types can't get hit by the Cinderace. And Terrain Extender is just a really good option for this specific event because it helps the Psychic types that are going to be used to counter Cinderace, and it's definitely something you can utilize more. And I think specifically because Slowbro's water typing combined with its Psychic typing, it makes a really good candidate to deal with this raid. So for our next option to deal with this raid, it's going to be Gyarados. Now, Gyarados is a really solid option because of its ability Intimidate, which it can use to lower Cinderace's attack from the start of the match. As well, too, it has access to Thunder Wave and Dragon Dance, which it can use a boost. Now, notably, I wanted to bring up Gyarados specifically because it is a mon that a lot of people will have early access to, or just access to in general that they can utilize into this raid. And also, if you're running Tera Flying, it does let you actually use Tera Blast, which you can super effectively. The reason why you have Waterfall in this set is because you will need to charge up your Tera first so that you can go for a Tera Blast. And this option, notably, the other ones that I brought up, I think are a little bit quicker to deal with the Cinderace. This one requires a little bit of setup, so this is more so an option I would only recommend using if you don't have another Pokemon that works a little bit better into this, right? But I want to give options for everyone. As well, too, you have Intimidate, so you reduce Cinderace is stats, you reduce all the stats, and then you're able to take fighting moves and you're able to take fire moves well because they're not hitting you for super effective, you're resisting both. And then if they go for an Electro Ball, as I mentioned with the other ones, you should still be fine. Gyarados has a naturally really high special defense stat, and on top of that, Cinderace is not going to have EVs because that's how it was during the 7-star raid Charizard. So and if it was going to be invested in EVs anyways, it would never be in special attack, so you're not too worried about that. The Gyarados is just focused in terms of its investment on max HP, max attack, just dealing as much damage as possible, and also just having as much bulk as possible to take hits from the Cinderace. So next up is Armorage. Armorage is just a Pokemon that just hard walls Cinderace. It's probably the best answer you could get, honestly, going into the Cinderace raid, mostly because of how good its resistances and immunities are. First off, it's completely immune to fire moves, right? So you can't even get hit for, by any of Cinderace's fire moves. On top of that, you have Psychic Terrain, which you can use, as I mentioned, like with Slowbro, and you can use it to just completely block any use of Sucker Punch. There's no Sucker Punch that is going to be working on this Armorage. You can literally just sit there and use it, and there's no issue with it. On top of that, too, if you're running Will-O-Wisp and Reflect, it also makes it really annoying for opposing Cinderace because you can lower their attack with Will-O-Wisp, and you can also just go for Reflect to completely stall them, which is really useful, right? And on top of that too, I think the main thing that Armorage does really well is it has Expanding Force, so it can do even more damage than even the other Psychic type Slowbro does. So you can do a ton of damage with Expanding, consistently rack up that damage, go for Psychic Terrain, like do a ton of damage. And then when you Tera type as well, you're still going to be hitting really hard with Expanding Force. You're actually be hitting just as hard, and you won't have any drawbacks of losing your fire type because you have Flash Fire. So to me, like, it's the perfect Pokemon to actually counter this raid, and I think that it will be the best option. Okay, so for our final Pokemon, which I call the 7-star raid killer, it's actually a Zoomeral. So a Zoomeral was good in the Charizard raid last time, and it basically completely walled Charizard. And again, it's probably going to do the same thing as Cinderace. The only thing that Cinderace really has to hit it is Trailblaze, which is a 50 base power grass move, so it's not really doing that much considering a Zoomeral's bulk. And on top of that too, you also have, you can do Guard Cheers, you can heal, but once a Zoomeral gets up a belly drum, it's going to be able to do incredible amounts of damage. And yes, there will be stat clearing from the opposing Cinderace, but that's why you're actually running Aqua Ring with the set as well. It allows you to get some passive healing as you're playing through the game. Now, you might notice and see why fake tiers. So if you're running a Zoomeral in a raid, right, with random specifically, like random people who you do not know, or you're playing it online, fake tiers makes a lot of sense because it gives you the option to support other people that are playing with special attackers to actually give yourself a better chance. Because something that got brought up in my last video was that a lot of people were like, okay, I'm not playing in a group anyway, so like, is the set still good? And like, absolutely, it's still good regardless, and you don't really need the 4th move slot anyways for anything else. So it allows you to go for fake tiers if you need to support another special attacker against Cinderace. So this set gives you a lot of different options. I think Azumarill is one of the best, along with Armorage. I think Armorage and Azumarill will be the best for this raid by far, with the other 3 I mentioned like close behind. Probably Gyarados being the one that's like more so in the middle, but still solid, right? I think Azumarill is just an incredibly good Pokemon. It'll be able to put on a lot of pressure here, and you can definitely leverage it well. The other thing too that you do have to consider with the Azumarill, and this is something that I do want to bring up as a warning, is if the Cinderace does have Gunk Shot, which is a possibility, your best option will always be Armorage in this raid. Azumarill is always good contingent on the fact that there is no Gunk Shot on that Cinderace. If there is Gunk Shot on the Cinderace, you might have to reconsider the Azumarill pick and maybe like hard commit to the Armorage. If you're having a different version of the game where you can't get Armorage, then do Pelipper or Slowbro. That would be my recommendation. All right, so I just want to take a second to actually talk about Cinderace's coverage and what you necessarily have to worry about if you're playing in this raid. So the main things that I found pretty concerning with it would be like Taunt, Swords Dance, Iron Head, Gunk Shot, basically just really good coverage for any fairies that you might have. So that's something that you have to be cautious with if you are bringing a fairy to see what kind of coverage it has, which is why I specifically brought up Armorage as the best answer, because it completely walls everything that this thing can do. Besides that, if you're using anything else, you are running the risk of Cinderace being able to hit you. Also, Pelipper is pretty safe in the Cinderace as well. Pelipper is one of the safer ones. So, what are the notable moves that you have to keep in mind? I think the biggest ones, Swords Dance, Iron Head, Gunk Shot, Will-O-Wisp. Those are like kind of the big impact ones, along with obviously fire type coverage with, Pyro Ball, or having access to the high jump kick, having access to Sucker Punch. But these are things that can be mitigated, and that's why I specifically think that Armorage and Pelipper are your best answers to this raid, because they are the ones that are least susceptible to all the coverage moves that Cinderace has access to. Even though Cinderace has Electro Ball, it's not really going to be doing that much to Pelipper, as I mentioned, because of its speed, and you should be able to sit in front of it really comfortably. I think the name of the game is going to be knowing whether or not it has a setup move and having counterplay to opposing Cinderace setup moves if need be. So for this section, I just wanted to add in a couple of other Pokemon that I think could deal really well with Cinderace as well. And I just wanted to quickly talk about them as well too. I will have all these sets up on my Patreon as well if you guys are interested in checking that out. As always though, I am going to kind of give you guys some ideas of what you could do with these Pokemon here. So Talonflame can go for strong Brave Birds. It has a good typing which resists both the fire and the fighting coverage from the opposing Cinderace. You have Dragonite, which also resists both of those general coverage moves from Cinderace. You have Salamence, which also resists those general coverage moves from Cinderace. You have Dachshund, which is resistant to fighting type moves and also absorbs fire type attacks to boost its own defense. And then Cerulege, who is immune to fire type moves and also has the ability to, completely wall fighting type moves. Now you do have to be careful with Sucker Punch with Cerulege specifically. The rest of them you can kind of play around whatever. As with Talonflame specifically, you have access to helpful moves like Will-O-Wisp, Brave Bird, Roost for longevity. You have flying type coverage moves with Dragonite, and you have Roost as well to kind of keep yourself alive. And then you also have Dragon Dance as well. Salamence, you have Intimidate, you have Focus Energy, or you have Dragon Dance, which you can use along with special flying moves and physical flying moves that you can take advantage of as well. Dachshund, which you can go for fairy moves that are just stab and do a bunch of damage, along with the being able to sit in front of Cinderace without really being pressured. And then Cerulege, which is able to just kind of sit in front of the Cinderace, but you need counterplay to the Sucker Punch, which is going to be really important to deal with. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Now we're going to go into actual strategies with different Pokemon. So if you have a group of 4 people that you're working with anyways, I'm assuming that you can get the right composition together that you need to optimally take down this Cinderace, right? Like obviously this section is for people that are in groups of friends that are able to deal with this. So, this is probably your most optimal strategy to completely wall the Cinderace and beat it. So you'll notice that there are 2 Armorage and there are 2 Pelipper. Notably, you can cut this down to have 3 Armorage and 1 Pelipper. But I made it 2 Pelipper, so let's say you have 2 people playing Violet and you have 2 people playing, Scarlet. It's easier to kind of, figure out how to balance that out. So you're not, just scrambling to get version exclusives. But basically, the Armorage are running the Armorage that we had, like the set that they're running is similar to the one that we had talked about for the previous Armorage. They are the guaranteed 2 Pokemon that can wall this raid. So basically with your 2 Pelippers, you can set up Rain and then just spam Chilling Water. Theoretically, because both Pelippers are going to have Damp Rock, you could change one to have like a different item to help with its damage or give it like recovery. It doesn't really make too much of a difference. But you can spam Chilling Waters to keep Cinderace's attack low over and over again while your Armorage are setting up. Because your Armorage can go for a Will-O-Wisp and one can click Reflect. One can click Psychic Terrain and one can click Expanding, and then it just goes on from there, right? Consistent expanding forces over and over again. And this just lets you, kind of beat the Cinderace really quickly and not let it do too much damage to you. You block all of its coverage moves and have the safest approach possible, basically, to this matchup. So I think that this strategy should be pretty unfailing. The turn 1 strategy setup, so I'm going to give you guys a turn by turn so you know exactly what you have to do. Turn 1, Pelipper, one of them can click Aqua Ring. One of them can click Chilling Water, then they alternate. This one clicks Aqua Ring, and this one clicks Chilling Water. And the Armorage, turn 1, one clicks Will-O-Wisp, one clicks Reflect, one clicks Psychic Terrain, one clicks Expanding Force. And then after that, you guys are just going to be spamming attacks over and over again. The Pelippers will roost as needed, but the Armorage should be fine to sit in front of anything and just be able to spam Expanding Force over and over again into the opposing Cinderace. And obviously there are going to be stages, but this should give you the best possible way to actually deal with this opposing Cinderace and not worry too much about opposing coverage. Now, you'll notice the Armorage have different EVs here. You could consider putting a bit more defense in Armorage if you want, or just being modest 252 if that's easier for you. Both of those options are doable. I just wanted to give you guys that option while talking about the strategy. So hopefully this helps you guys. I wanted to really give you guys like what I felt like was the unfailing strategy for the raid, and also give you guys individual options that you could utilize, but you have to be cautious with into the raid, because realistically this raid with Cinderace has so much more coverage than Charizard did, but they are still limited to a certain amount of moves, right? So it's going to be important to see what moves are being used, whether they have set up moves and all that stuff. Hopefully this video was helpful for you guys, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to support, share the video, like, comment, everything else. Make sure to check out Patreon as well, where I will be posting more Tera raid sets to actually deal with this raid. And as always, guys, thank you so much for all the support. I incredibly appreciate it. It means a lot that I'm able to make this kind of content. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.